Hey, it's your friend Charlie. Have you ever had a situation or a challenge in your life where you felt like just throwing in the towel? Things got tough and you just said, I can't do this anymore. I'm done. You're pushing along and then frustration hits. And suddenly giving up seems way easier and more manageable. Well, today I want to dive into a new term that maybe you haven't heard before, but it's a great concept that has challenged me and it has opened my mind to some significant growth in my relationships, in my life. It's the idea of our ability to tolerate frustration. Let's unpack this together here on the Charlie Grimes podcast.
The Charlie Grimes podcast features meaningful conversations about faith, scripture, and practical applications for modern life. As a Christian pastor, Charles offers a unique perspective to enrich listeners' spiritual journeys. The podcast aims to inspire and uplift through engaging discussions and interviews on diverse topics such as resilience, encouragement, and growth. The podcast also focuses on positivity and community, empowering individuals to overcome challenges and embrace their unique journeys. Pastor Charlie explores themes of support, motivation, and the power of connection in everyday life. Welcome to the show. Take it away, Charlie.
Oh my, here we go today. Well, welcome back again. Today I want to dive into something that has kind of changed my life. It's changed my perspective on some things. As you heard there in the intro, it's our ability to handle life's frustrations. Do you have those moments when you're ready to just throw your computer out the window or you're frustrated and you throw up your hands? How quickly do you get to that point? Yeah, that's the question I have for us. I've been introduced to a concept called frustration tolerance. And it relates directly back to something that was very clear and something that was very familiar to me. And it might be familiar to you too. Back in my early days of working, I was, of course, an exercise and athletics-related person. And in that field of exercise and training people, we used to talk about exercise tolerance. And this actually meant the person's ability to handle the workload of the exercises or the drills, the training that we were putting on their body. Especially in cardiac rehab situations, okay, where there's been an injury or something, we would measure how much load or encourage people, obviously, to increase the amount of tolerance that they had to exercise. And so the more tolerance that they built up, the stronger they would get, the better off they would be. And that's part of the training process. Well, in our emotional health, think about this. We live in a world of instant messages, Instacart deliveries, instant streaming. We've lost touch, perhaps, with the idea of sticking with something when things get a little tough. But your ability to stick with a challenging situation might be the very secret to achieving your greatest goals and to building a deep and meaningful life. What does it mean for a person to have a low tolerance to frustration? And when you think about that, let me give you a little common example. Have you ever thought about trying to learn a new skill? Maybe you want to play a musical instrument. I've been through this process, right? You're trying to master something, and after a few challenging attempts, a few days, a few lessons, perhaps you just throw up your hands and say, I can't do this. I can't do it. You have a lower frustration tolerance in that particular activity. Like it shows up when we're having, really hard time with something. But here's the thing. We can recognize that and we can manage that response. And it's actually not about avoiding the frustration. It's about learning to sit in it and to understand its effect on us. I have a very practical example from my high school days. So I was a pretty good student, and I remember progressing through the math classes in our high school, and I got to, this senior level math level that was calculus. And in spite of a great teacher and, wonderful classmates, I never got it. I never understood calculus. And I just kind of hid it. I kind of, maybe, just sloughed my way through the class trying to figure it out. And I never understood it. I was so frustrated that I just gave up. And I kind of regret that now because it definitely limited my academic progress. Like when I got to college, it was like, oh no, I've never had calculus, or I don't understand that. And, I've made my way. Certainly you can live without knowing calculus. And some of you say, hey, geez, calculus, go figure. I couldn't even get algebra. Maybe you struggled at that same level or in a different subject. But I hope you understand what I'm trying to say is that at that critical moment in my life, I faced a challenge and I completely backed down away from it. I never overcame the frustration that I was facing in trying to learn something new. My tolerance for frustration was very low in calculus. Now, let me give you an example that was a little bit more successful. Some of you have heard me joke about my golf game. I was pretty athletic when I was young, but I would get on the golf course and I would just get so frustrated. I would get so angry because I couldn't hit the ball well, right? And so it wasn't until I was literally into my 30s that I just had this, love-hate relationship with golf because it was just so frustrating because I had such a high expectation for myself and I could never play the way I knew that I wanted to. Until I, particularly bad day on the golf course, put my club back in the bag and I sat down and I said, I think I figured this out. And my partner was like, well, whoa, what are you talking about? And I just said, this is really hard. And I'm terrible. But I'm never going to quit trying. Did you note the slight change in my thinking? Well, what's your area? I'd love to hear from you. What area is frustrating you that you are so quick to just quit? We may have those areas where we quit. We have a low tolerance to frustration. And the interesting things here is how we respond to that. Some respond with anger. Some respond with withdrawal. But here's a verse for you. I want you to think about. I'm back to the book of James again. But in James chapter 1, here's verses 2 through 4. It says, consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. And let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. Oh, what a beautiful verse that talks about this. It says, let perseverance finish its work. How do you do that? Well, that's what I'm talking about here, is that if we have somehow a low tolerance for those trials, the testing that comes, we're going to quit. We're just going to give up. And we're going to move on, or we're going to, react or withdraw. And that's actually not moving us towards maturity and completeness. And we're gonna be missing something, kind of like in my academic career, right? But those people who have developed a higher tolerance for frustration, it can be done, right? Just like in our exercise examples. You do something over and over and over again. You put yourself through the process of exercise and your body responds. You get stronger. Your muscles don't hurt quite so bad. You can lift more. You can perhaps walk a little faster. You can do things at a higher capacity because you've put in the time. And that's what I see in people who have a high tolerance for frustration. It wasn't that they didn't face any problems in life. We think of wonderful issues and illustrations from history. People who faced all kinds of persecution and challenges, but they never gave up. And it wasn't that they didn't face problems, but I think it was that they figured out how to grow from those problems. And I want you to know today that you and I can do that too. It's not about avoiding the problems. It's about transforming our perspective of those problems and turning them into opportunities for growth. I remember with my work with student athletes, and there were many who would come from high school programs where their capacity to do work was kind of low, especially at first. They had no idea how hard being a college athlete would be. And they used to give up. And at the very moment that a workout or a drill became challenging, they would quit. But something amazing would happen when we started working on them, encouraging them, forcing them to take small steps and to increase their durability and their frustration tolerance. That's what it was. You're trying to learn how to do a new skill. You're trying to learn how to perform at a higher level. It's gonna be hard. I think of one particular situation where we struggled. Some of you are listening and may have been on the team that we had a few athletes that really struggled with the event, the javelin. Well, the javelin, everybody knows the javelin. Well, the javelin is pretty technical. It's really hard. And for a few of our athletes, the javelin was just a headache. And it was so hard that we would push kids to the point of like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, I can't get it. But we would continue to work on it, and we would continue to do drills and learn the skill set to throw the javelin. And what they finally figured out is that the problems and the hurdles and the frustration that they faced, it was not a sign of failure. It was not a reflection on them. Did you catch that? That's the critical realization that I want you to make here. What you're doing when you have a low tolerance for frustration is that you're quick to put it back on yourself. Like, oh, I'm a failure, or I'm terrible, or I can't do this. It's me. I'm sorry, coach. I can't do it. Well, now wait a minute. Just like my calculus. Now, if my teacher would have pinned me down and said, now listen, we're going to keep on this until we figure it out. Building your frustration tolerance is not about just gritting your teeth and pushing and pushing and pushing. That's not what I'm saying. It's about developing a whole new relationship with the challenges that you're going to face. It's about understanding that those uncomfortable moments of frustration are exactly where the magic can happen in our lives. And so you look for those opportunities now to grow, to learn, and to become a little bit stronger. I want you to think of our tolerance to frustration like a muscle. The more you work at it, the stronger that it gets. And it's just like, if you want to bench 200 pounds, you're not probably going to do that on your first day at the gym. You shouldn't expect to handle every frustrating situation that you face immediately. It's about progress, not perfection. And sometimes we have to be reminded of that. I used to work with head coaches at the university level. They had extremely stressful jobs. They were trying to manage all sorts of challenges. And I would remind them. I would say, hey, what you're trying to do is extremely difficult. Don't forget that. Okay? Because they would put it on themselves. They would be like, oh, I'm terrible. I'm no good. This isn't fair. The situation is killing me. I'd be like, listen, it's tough. What you're trying to do is really hard. Don't forget that, right? And so if you're finding in your life that you're just really frustrated with something, there is an opportunity there. There is an opportunity for you to examine how you're responding to it and to not let it reflect on you, but actually start to implement some different thinking and some different strategies to approach frustration. Hey, I want to give you a short break, and we'll talk more about the practical ways that we can start to implement this in your life in just a few moments.
Hey, podcast listeners, we'd like to take a quick break to share something special with you. Did you know the Charlie Grimes podcast is a joint ministry effort, a partnership between Pastor Charlie and the wonderful congregation at Walnut Creek Mennonite Church? That's right. This podcast is a way for us to extend our community and ministry beyond the church's walls. If you're ever in the area, we would love for you to visit us. We're located in beautiful Holmes County, Ohio, known for its serene landscapes and warm, welcoming community. We invite you to join us for our Sunday services each week at 10 a.m. Whether you're a longtime believer or just beginning to explore your faith, you'll find a loving and supportive environment. Our services offer a unique blend of traditional and contemporary elements, creating a space where everyone can connect with God meaningfully. Pastor Charlie's teachings and messages, which you enjoy on this podcast, are rooted in the same faith and values we uphold at Walnut Creek Mennonite Church. The church is a place to explore Scripture, engage in meaningful conversations, and strengthen your relationship with God. As Charlie encourages you on the podcast, our church community supports one another in our upward, inward, and outward journeys. So, if you're looking for a church home or just passing through, we'd be thrilled to have you. Visit Walnut Creek Mennonite Church in beautiful Holmes County, Ohio. We are located between Sugar Creek and Berlin, and you can learn more about us at our website and in the show notes below. We believe faith is a journey best traveled together, and we'd love to walk with you on it. Now back to the podcast.
All right, now listen, here's the fun part. And this is where we start to implement our thinking towards building a superpower. Like, one of the greatest joys of my life was to run the decathlon. Many of you heard these stories. And believe it or not, I was kind of an oddity in the world of decathlon because my highest scoring event, the event where I would score the most points overall, was the last event, the 1,500 meter run. 1,500 meter run on the track. It's just short of a mile. But that event, for those of you that are familiar with running, is just all about guts. And what I had developed and was naturally, predisposed towards is that I had a high tolerance for that physical pain of running in the middle distances. So when I trained to run the 1,500, I had this superpower of saying, you know what? I have the ability to hurt more than anybody else in the race. And that is crazy. I know it is. But it was my superpower because I knew that I was going to be able to tolerate a pace and a pain that was higher than anybody else in that race. And that, more often than not, is exactly how it played out. And I was actually able to set some records in decathlon 1,500 meter races because I could tolerate more pain than anybody else. And you can do it too. Tolerating frustration is a skill that takes practice, but it can be developed. And there's small little victories that can be set in place. Okay, so let's talk about what's happened here. Our thoughts in our head are super powerful, right? And here's a subtle thought, right? When you face something that's pretty difficult, you could say one of two things. You could say, oh, this is impossible. I can't do this. All right, that's a thought. Or you could say, man, this is really challenging, but I think I can figure it out. Now, there's a subtle difference there. I think I can figure it out, or I can't. You are going to become what you say you're going to become. When you're ready to quit something out of frustration, how about you commit to just that little shift and say, yeah, this is tough. This is really hard, but I think I can figure it out. I'm going to keep trying to figure it out. It's not about me. See, that's immediately what that voice in your head wants to say. Oh, you're terrible. You can't do this. Take 3 deep breaths. Yes, just do it right now. Okay. Wait. The next time you're feeling that frustration bubble up in you, where is it? Is it in your shoulders? Is it in the pit of your chest? Maybe it's a headache. Frustration can feel pretty intense, and we need to manage that feeling. Let me share with you another really personal but kind of practical application of this. It's kind of humorous too, but in my past, I used to love, and still do occasionally, to play video games, right? I mean, who doesn't like a good shooter video game? It's something fun I've done in the past. But when I first got introduced to this type of game, it was actually at the holiday time. And I have 3 nephews. So Wendy's oldest sister has 3 sons. And when they were, middle school and high school age, they would bring their gaming system to the in-laws, and we would spend a couple days together. And it's pretty funny that I became the 4th, so you've got a split screen where 4 guys are playing together. And I'm terrible. I'm just completely new to the game. I don't even know what I'm looking at. I don't know where the buttons are. I'm just completely lost, right? And these 3 young people, they're really good. And so the best one of them takes me on as the partner. And the most common phrase that we still joke about sometimes in the family, you're dead, Uncle Charlie. Yep, you're dead. Oh, sorry. You start back at the base again. Yep, you're respawning again and again and again and again. No, many people would have just given up. You're like, oh, I can't do this. I'm too old. This is embarrassing. It's humiliating that my 12-year-old nephew is beating me at video games. But I didn't say that. I was pretty motivated, obviously. I'm a gritty person. I said, all right, I got to catch on. Like, how do I do this? Tell me what to do. Teach me how to do this. I want to learn, right? And so I'm capable of dealing with this frustration because I have the mindset of saying, well, it's tough. I'm kind of out of my element here. So then what would happen is after a little while, I'd play, I'd try something new, I'd learn, I'd take a break, go back to it a few hours later, try it again, and eventually over 1 or 2 days, maybe a couple visits, I got better. But it was only because I raised my tolerance to that frustration of failure. And the boys were really good at it, but I wasn't. And so that brings me to ask you this. Do you have a place in your life where you're not in charge, where you're not the smartest person in the room, where you're not in charge, where you're not, the best, the most mature, the strongest, the smartest, the most skilled? I think we need more opportunities to sit in rooms where we're the pupil, where we're the learner, where we need to learn to deal with the pain and the price of growing and learning. Like, be teachable, right? And find avenues, find people who are going to challenge you to make you better. Because what happens sometimes is we don't want to be around those people because that's frustrating. Like, oh, this person did that, or they we get into this comparisоnism, and we just run away from situations where we're going to feel frustrated. And I think that's wrong. In that video game example, I was highly motivated. Like, I wanted to learn how to do it. It's a video game. It's fun. It's supposed to be fun, right? But here's the real issue. I actually have other places in my life where I'm not so motivated. And that's when it gets the most tough, right? When I'm facing frustration, the feelings come up and I just want to get away. I may even go to places in my mind or in life where I don't want to go to deal with the frustration that I'm facing in a particular relationship or a particular situation. Some of the research that I've done, and I want you to join me in this and reading, is that psychologists and researchers would tell you that addictions often form and unhealthy habits can form when we simply are not dealing with the frustration and the pain that we're facing in our life. We're running from it. We're trying to fill or medicate that as a coping mechanism that's not good. And so that's the hardest part of this, is that are you turning to things or places where you really shouldn't go, or you don't want to go? Take a look at your choices. Is it a result of my low tolerance for frustration? I want to encourage you today as we bring this episode to the end. Most likely, your tolerance to frustration can be increased in two very specific ways. And I want to go back to my days as a coach. How did we develop exercise tolerance? Well, we trained in two ways. You had to do the right things in succession, in a progression, usually in increasing progression, right? We'll do a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. But at the same time, we were making sure that we were resting, that we're eating well, taking good care of ourselves, hydrating, sleeping well. And here's what I've discovered in my life, is that your tolerance to frustrating situations can be addressed just that same way. Do you struggle at certain times of the day? Like, are you just frustrated? Because, watch this, are you hungry? Are you angry? Are you lonely? Are you tired? HALT. That's a great acronym that I've learned. In counseling, you find that when you're hungry, when you're angry, when you're lonely, when you're tired, those are the precursors to me having a very low tolerance for frustration. And then I'm tempted to possibly go and do some things, or maybe, try to medicate that in ways that are not healthy. So I'm going to address those factors in my life. I don't want to be hungry. I don't want to be angry. I don't want to be lonely. I don't want to be tired. So I have to take care of myself. Then, here's the challenge. Start to increase situations or perhaps items or issues in your life where you can practice tolerating frustrating situations. It could be as simple as you go to the grocery store, and as long as you got time, pick the slowest line. Pick the line that's the longest. You're like, what? Why would you ever do that? Yeah, because it's frustrating. But you're going to expose yourself to being in a frustrating situation. Perhaps you could get into a class or take a course online in a hobby or something that's very difficult to do. Like I said, learning to play an instrument or learning something new. Even driving in the slow lane on the highway, purposely at the speed limit or even a little under it, can be a challenge for you to learn to deal with frustration. Your mission, as you move forward in this, is to practice sitting with that frustration for just a little longer than usual. Just a little longer. Just hang on, sit in that moment of frustration, take a deep breath, regulate yourself, become more aware of it in your mind and your heart, and face it just a little bit further, and don't run away. Don't run away. Hey, listen, I want you to know that you are not alone in this journey. You need to build a network of friends, a network of close people in your life that can hold you accountable to this, but also encourage you when they see you doing well, right? Building tolerance to frustration is a series of choices, and every little small step. Keep track of your progress in a journal. Celebrate the wins, but be patient with yourself and with your life. Hey, next time I'm going to explore an even more fascinating topic. Until then, keep pushing on those boundaries in your life. Stay curious. Remember that something frustrating doesn't mean that you're bad, right? It just means that it's tough, and you will reap a harvest Okay, this is where Galatians 6 and 9 comes in, right? We will reap a harvest if we don't give up. Often, frustration is the indicator that you're headed towards something even better. In the meantime, hang tough, stay humble, and go make it a great day.
Thanks for joining the Charlie Grimes podcast. We hope you feel inspired and uplifted. Remember to start where you are, take what you have, and do what you can. Keep embracing your journey, and we'll see you next time. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, comment, subscribe, and share the podcast with your friends and family. Your support helps us spread encouragement and positivity to others.